Hello everyone, this is Breaking Brian. We're back with another deep dive for The Walking Dead. This will talk about things that in the show that are and are not from the comics. So the episode starts out with Rick looking over Atlanta the morning after the battle. He is on the radio and he's warning Morgan and Dwayne to stay out of Atlanta, that it's overrun with the dead and it's not safe. Rick says on the radio that he found his family and he's part of a camp that is just outside the city. He also tells Morgan that there are less of them now because of the attack from last night and that they can't stay at the camp anymore and that they need to leave. Rick even tells Morgan and Dwayne to stay safe and then Rick leaves. This doesn't happen in the comics. Rick never tries the radio for Morgan, and in the comics, issue 6, we see that it is snowing for Amy's funeral. It is not summer like here. This episode will mostly cover issue 6, with parts sprinkled in from issues 7 and 8 as well. Back at the Atlanta camp, Andrea is still hovering over Amy's dead body. She is catatonic and barely moving. Lori barely tries to comfort her and tells Andrea that they're gonna need to take care of Amy, and by that, she means to destroy her brain so that she doesn't turn. Now in the comics, Andrea also stays longer by Amy's grave and doesn't talk to anyone for a few days, but she does clean up and move a little bit. Also in the comics, everyone does a eulogy for Amy, talking about what they liked about her and how they will miss her. In the show, sadly, Amy doesn't get this kind of love. Back with the main group, they are still working and clearing out the bodies and trying to process what to do next, as they are also worried Amy will turn and hurt somebody. Rick, not feeling empathetic, goes and struts to Andrea, and Andrea pulls her gun out, ready to pop a cap on Rick like he's a cracker cop. Yeah, you guys really shouldn't have been talking about your plan to deal with Amy within earshot of Andrea. Not the best idea. Andrea says that she knows how the safety works, calling back to her and Rick's previous conversation in episode 2. In the comics, Andrea never pulls a gun on Rick after Amy's death. Rick comes back to the group, and Daryl is pissed off that they're being chicken as he says Amy is a time bomb. Now, yes, Amy is going to turn and become a walker, but it's simple. Just have someone sit and watch 5 feet from Andrea. It's not that hard. In the comics, the group never has to deal with this, as Andrea already destroyed Amy's brain the night prior. So Daryl and Morales go back to burning the bodies, but Glenn tells them that they're dragging it the wrong place, as that's one of their red shirts, not a walker that attacked them. So they need to bury him, not burn him. Glenn is very serious about this, even yelling at them. The show establishes Glenn as a voice of reason and the moral compass of the group. In the comics, he's just a good guy that was never really the moral compass. Daryl shouts at the group, saying that because they left Merle for dead, they had this coming. Now, this will begin a trend in the show where when the group fails someone in a horrible way or does something really messed up, and this will result in them being punished by the universe or faith or death himself or God in some horrible way for what they did or didn't do. Meanwhile, Jim and Jackie are trying to move a body, but Jackie notices his shirt has blood on it. She questions him about it, and he tells her that he only got scratched during the attack. Jackie asks to see it, and Jim begs her not to tell anyone, but Jackie freaks out, telling everyone that Jim has been bitten. This is similar to the comics, except everyone already knew that Jim was bitten the night Amy died, and Donna, Alan's wife, was the one taking care of him inside his tent. Everyone surrounds Jim here in the show, and they ask him to lift his shirt up. Wow, guys, kind of forward, don't you think? Like, serious harassment. Anyway, Jim takes his favorite thing out, a shovel, but T-Dog holds him down, and then Daryl looks, seeing that there is indeed a bite on his side. Jim says that he's fine over and over again, as everyone looks on in complete shock. Jim is still in denial, saying he'll be fine, in a very unsettling and creepy way. Afterwards, Jim sits by himself next to the RV as the group tries to discuss what to do next. Rick says that Jim needs help, and he mentions that the CDC was working on a cure. At least he heard that from Morgan, and says that it's their best plan to find safety and help for Jim. Shane is really unsure about the odds as the world ended. In the comics, Rick and Shane only argue over whether or not they should stay or leave the camp. In the comics, Shane is completely delusional and in denial, telling Rick that they should remain at the Atlanta camp in case the military finally comes, while Rick wants to go anywhere else away from the city. Here in the show, Shane suggests instead that they head for Fort Benning, 100 miles away, but he heard it was safe before everything went dead. While they're talking, Daryl gets annoyed and runs at Jim with his pickaxe and tells them he's going to be the only one to get rid of the problem as he's about to murder Jim, but Rick pulls his gun out, telling Daryl they don't kill the living. Daryl stops and says it's funny as Rick is pointing a gun at him for the second time in 2 days. Rick decides to take Jim away, and they're gonna go in the RV where it's safe. Back with Andrea, Dale goes over to Andrea to pay his respects to Amy. He sits down with her and tells her about how his wife died from cancer and how hard it was for him to accept it and move on. It was very hard for him to be around people again to get over the pain, but he did after he met Amy and Andrea back in Atlanta when everything happened. Andrea actually smiles a bit and takes out the wrapper containing Amy's gift. It is very sad and ironic as Amy died a day before her birthday, and Dale remembers now. Now, in the comics, Dale does comfort Andrea, but he does it in a very creepy way in the RV on their bed, with a hand on her shoulder and back for a long time. Yeah, Dale is a creep in the comics. Here in the show, Andrea mentions how she was never there for Amy's birthdays growing up, as she was always away in college or work during them and couldn't make it past the phone for her birthdays, so she always calls instead. Andrea unwraps the gift and takes it out, the mermaid necklace from episode 2 and 4, and then puts it on Amy's body. Meanwhile, Daryl is stabbing heads in with a pickaxe. Now, how in the world this wasn't done immediately after attack is beyond me. It's been 8 hours since Amy and the other red shirts died, so why the heck did they wait this freaking long? They burned the Walker bodies and tried to murder Jim and stab Amy's body, but they left half-eaten Ed here to turn. Yeah, completely idiotic. So Carol comes over and arrives and asks Daryl to let her stab Ed's head in as he was her husband. Daryl gives her the pickaxe and Carol lifts it up, upset. She slams the axe down on his head, destroying his brain. Now Carol actually lifts the axe up again and stabs Ed in the head again, despite it being unnecessary. Carol keeps going on this for a while because she actually hated Ed too and is letting years and a decade's worth of abuse back onto his body. Daryl is a little surprised by this, and Carol lets it out, finally being free from Ed's abuse. Back with Andrea, she begins to hear something and Amy is making noises. After half a day, Amy finally reanimates, her eyes are gray, and she is now a walker. Like I said in the comics, Andrea doesn't let Amy turn into a walker. Amy looks back at Andrea and tries to eat her, but she is very weak in doing so. Now, Amy's body is mostly intact, minus a few bites on her, so the reason why she's so weak and having such a hard time trying to eat Andrea is unknown. Is it possible her body is resisting harming her own sister due to muscle memory? As stated before, walkers are more supernatural in the show than in the comics. Shane and Rick begin to notice Amy is a walker now. They really should have been watching the sisters like hawks, but spilled milk. Andrea caresses Amy's head, saying that she's sorry and that she's here now and that she loves her, before putting the gun to her head and shooting her. Amy is finally dead now. At the graves, Rick and Shane are digging, not sure why they're digging, as Jim dug a whole bunch of graves already yesterday in the show. They talk and argue a bit. Shane says that Rick took half their manpower with him, but Shane is either blind or horrible at math. Rick only took 3 men with him in Atlanta, and Daryl was going to go regardless. The camp had dozens of people in it, and in all honesty, Shane and Dale are the most to blame for the massacre because they didn't have someone watching on top of the RV last night. Rick counters that without the guns, they might have lost the entire camp instead of just half. Anyways, Daryl arrives with his pickup truck with the bodies. Shane mentions that the people are going to want to know who's in charge now. This is similar to the comics, as Rick and Shane were the co-leaders. In the RV, Jim is sweating from his fever caused by the walker bite. He is either hallucinating or he's suffering from PTSD when his family was killed. Hard to say. Is this what everyone sees who's bit sees before they die? Who can really say? Back with the others, Dale and Andrea are lowering Amy's body to the grave to bury her, and Dale helps her up. After the funeral, the Grimes family have a discussion, and Carl is scared, asking if they're safe now. Rick swears on his son's life that he'll never leave again, and as we all know, Rick eventually breaks his promise multiple times. Anyways, Rick and Lori talk alone, and Lori, being the best wife ever, doesn't use simple logic or math to reassure her husband that he was in the right. Lori partially defends Shane's mindset that they lost people and they're weaker now. Lori plays both sides here, with Rick and Shane's viewpoints, clearly foreshadowing her infidelity. Lori says that they can't think about helping Jim because they're all terrified right now. While Rick is not 100% certain that the CDC is the right call, he tells Lori that he loves her, and he's certain of that. Back in the RV, Carol is taking care of Jim. In the comics, it was Donna. Also in the comics, Jim dies a day after he's bitten, While here in the show, he actually will make it another day. Rick talks to Jim, and Jim asks Rick to take care of the boat meaning the entire group. Outside the RV, Shane tries to tell Lori that she has to tell Rick that the CDC won't work for them. Lori actually defends her stance with Rick, and it gets awkward as Rick comes back outside, interrupting the conversation. Rick asks what's up, and Shane says that they need a plan. Both of them do agree, however, that they need to leave the camp. Lori says she backs Rick up as Shane is disappointed. Rick and Shane are in the woods doing a perimeter check. Now in the comics, Rick and Shane are actually hunting with Carl, who's tagging along with them, and Shane kills a rabbit. Afterwards, Rick and Shane argue, and Carl runs back to the camp crying. Here in the show, Rick asks Shane why he can't support him on this, and says if Lori and Carl were his family, he'd feel differently about this. Shane takes offense to this, saying that he protected them like family before they hear something interrupting them. Rick goes to check it out as Shane stands and looks, aiming his shotgun. Shane then sees Rick in his sights and aims his gun at him for a good long while, actually realizing he could kill Rick right now if he wanted to. Now in the comics, this happens much differently. In the comics, after another argument, Shane runs into the woods and points his gun at Rick, trying to kill him. Carl saves Rick by shooting Shane in the neck, killing him, and Shane dies. This doesn't happen in the show. Shane snaps out of his insanity moment here in the show as Dale looks on worried, having seen the entire thing. Shane tries to cover his butt, saying that they need to wear their protective vests out here, but what vests? They left the hockey armor back in the department store, and neither Rick nor Shane took any of their bulletproof vests from the police station. Back in the camp, Rick and Shane go to talk to the remaining group members, and Shane has decided to trust Rick on the CDC, telling everyone that they're going to head to the CDC. Notice how Morales doesn't say anything here. So the next morning, Rick goes back overlooking the city and tries to radio for Morgan again, and still nothing again. So it's actually been 2 days now since the attack of the camp and Amy's death, and Jim is miraculously still alive. Back at the camp, Shane is all clean and tells everyone that they're going to head to the CDC and they need to be careful on the road and with their radios. Everyone is all clean with new clothes. I guess they needed the extra day to shower. Even Daryl is clean here, which is going to be incredibly rare. And here we get Smooth Brain Morales telling Shane that they're not going with them. Everyone is surprised by their idiocy, and his wife Miranda says that they have family in Birmingham, Alabama, and want to be with their people. Okay, now this has to be one of the most retarded things a character in the Walking Dead universe can ever do. First off, what people? Other Mexicans? Look, like 99% of the world right now is either dead or a walker. Miranda can't fight, and they have 2 young children who also can't defend themselves. Shane even says to them point blank to Mr. Dumbhead that he will have no one to watch his back out there, and Morales says that he's fine taking the chance. Yes, he wants to risk his family's lives to find more of his race. Morales, safety in the group is the best thing for your family right now. He doesn't budge, and Rick and Shane decide to give Morales the revolver with a half box full of rounds. Now keep in mind, the gun only holds 6 shots, and it's a small gun. He'll be the only one who will be able to use it. Daryl even walks away, knowing that they're going to die from their stupidity. Carl and Lori actually get emotional and say their goodbyes to the family. It's actually kind of sweet. In the comics, Alan and his family, who inspired Morales and them, never leave Rick's group because his brain wasn't taco meat. Goodbye, Morales. I hope to God in heaven, our Lord, we never ever see you again, ever. We get Lori and Sophia saying goodbye to the kids. It is very sweet, and Eliza even gives Sophia her doll to keep and remember her by. Rick even gives Morales a radio as a backup, which he will never use. After that, they leave the camp. Rick leaves a note for Morgan to find, and they drive out of the quarry with their vehicles. Morales goes to Idiotsville as he's the mayor, and Rick and them go to the opposite direction and head for the CDC. They are making their way there, and Jackie is taking care of Jim in the back of the RV. We see Rick, Lori, and the kids, the others in the vehicles, and Jim is screaming as he's in a lot of pain. Suddenly, we see that the RV is smoking, and Dale says the radiator hose is done, as he reminds Rick he needed the one from the Q van, which Merle stole off screen last episode. Shane looks with his binoculars down the road, and is going to head to a possible gas station and scavenge, as Jackie comes out and says that Jim is not going to make it. Shane and T-Dog leave, as Rick goes to see Jim. Jim tells Rick he's going to die now, as he's in too much pain. His bones are weak and says that he's ready to die and be with his family in death and as a walker. Everyone in the group outside is discussing Jim's decision for them to leave him here as a walker to turn. In the comics, this happens as well, but they take Jim just outside the city to leave him to turn. And eventually they head back to camp. They leave Jim at the tree, like in the comics, and they begin to say their goodbyes. Rick asks Jim one more time if he wants a gun, and Jim says no because Rick will need the gun more than him. Jim then thanks Dale for everything he's done for them, and everyone watches on. Even Daryl gets a little bit closer, and surprisingly doesn't try to put an arrow in his head, respecting his decision and leaving him by the tree. Jim is slowly fading away as he stares up in the sky. Everyone takes one last look at Jim as they leave him, and they drive off before they're all gone. Jim eventually dies and turns. After that, we get this weird glitchy transmission from the CDC itself. On a camera is Dr. Edwin Jenner, a character that doesn't at all exist from the comic. He's recording himself saying it's been 193 days since the wildfire virus was declared, and 63 days since the virus went global. Now, this opens a huge can of lore and worms. This means the virus was around when Rick was shot. But then that doesn't make people turn. Perhaps the virus needed to be dormant in the human body for 4 months before making everyone turn. Yeah, who knows? Jenner says that he has had no progress on the virus, so that means no cure. The CDC is also losing power, and he doesn't know what he's going to do anymore. He can't sleep and is slowly dying. Inside the laboratory, Jenner is wearing a nerd outfit and takes out some brain samples from TS-19 and tries to experiment with them. He does multiple tests trying to find a cure, but unfortunately, the substances don't seem to affect the virus cells. He then stupidly burns his brain samples trying to reach for something and contaminates it and his lab. Jenner then leaves the lab and goes into the decontamination chamber and strips down like a germaphobe. Or I guess someone during COVID, whichever works. Afterwards, the lab unfortunately gets set on fire, destroying all his research and the samples. Back in the recording video, Jenner says that the samples are all gone and he can't work anymore as they were the freshest Walker brains that he had, as the others were too decayed to study or change. He then breaks the fourth wall, looking at the audience, and we zoom out to see that there is nobody around him. He's the last scientist there. Jenner says he might opt out and considers it, but then he drinks more wine and throws the bottle in the air, breaking it. None of this at all happens from the comics whatsoever. Back with the group, they finally make it to the CDC and get out of the RV. There's dead bodies everywhere outside. Rick and the others are trying to get past the nasty smell of 1,000 dead bodies around them. Now, even though it's not the CDC, in the comics the characters actually do go to Wiltshire Estates after Shane dies and they leave the camp. The characters move quietly, heading to the building. Now, we don't know what exactly happened here. The tanks are abandoned, the military are dead, and even the walkers or former people are dead too. Did people come here alive for safety and were killed by the military for trespassing, or did the military die defending the place from zombies, or both? We'll never know. Inside, Jenner is alerted on the security cameras of Rick and them, and looks. He sees them outside. Now, they finally make it to the doors, but the metal shutters are blocking their way in, and there seemingly is no one here. Rick thinks it's suspicious that the metal shutters are down. Suddenly, they see a zombie, and Daryl kills it as everyone begins to panic. Daryl calls out Rick for getting them all killed, and Shane tells him to shut up. Carol and Lori say that they need to go somewhere tonight as it's dark and they're in the city. Rick isn't sure what to do, and Shane suggests again Fort Benning instead. Andrea and Glenn pull out their logic badges and say that it is too far and they don't have enough supplies to make it tonight. Lori shouts that they need an answer now as Carl cries. Rick says that they'll think of something. An easy solution would be to go to the Vatos gang and give them half your guns for a safe night at their place. Shane tells everyone that they need to leave and they begin to follow him, but Rick sees the camera moving and alerts everyone that it moved. He gets closer and Jenner doesn't want Rick and them here. Shane tries to convince Rick that they have to leave, but Rick bangs on the door and shouts at Jenner, saying that he knows he's in there. Rick begs Jenner to let them in as they're desperate. They have families with them and no food and barely any gas left. Lori tries to convince Rick to stop as more walkers are coming towards them. Rick tells Jenner that if he turns them all away, he'll be killing them. Shane pulls Rick away as Jenner looks conflicted. Rick shouts multiple times that Jenner is killing them as suddenly the doors open angelically, much to the survivor's surprise. Everyone looks on in shock as the door is open and glowing. The survivors look on in slow motion as the light gets bigger and brighter, blinding the viewer. And that's going to be it for my episode 5 review. See you guys next time for the review for episode 6, the finale.